I want to bring back in Simon Welsh from Redbridge Group. He's a Redbridge Group director. He conducts focus groups during the campaign. He is tracking the sentiments of voters just to see how we are in the lead up to May 3. Simon, thank you for your patience. I wanted to ask you about how the death of the Pope, do you think, might affect the campaign? His funeral needs to be held within 4 to 6 days of his death. Obviously, both the leaders have suspended campaigning, at least for today. Is that going to affect this campaign all that much, do you think?
Look, I think it probably has a minor effect, if anything, in terms of the mechanics of the campaign. Not so much in terms of the way people's vote intention or anything like that, but in terms of the mechanics of it. So if you're Peter Dutton's Liberal Party, where you've got the trend running against you right now for those reasons that we spoke about just before, we've seen this significant drop on their primary vote over the last sort of 3 or 4 weeks for those reasons. You need every minute of every hour of every day to sort of make things count. So anything that's going to interrupt that, knowing that you're already going to lose a day for Anzac Day, effectively if you're losing that weekend, it's a long weekend. Who's going to sit around and watch television when they could be out doing things over a long weekend? You're losing significant chunks of time already. So I think anything that interrupts the mechanics of the campaign is bad news for Dutton's Liberals that are trying to turn around this trend that's emerged over these last sort of 3-4 weeks based on that sort of perception of risk and uncertainty around their sort of, their offer to the electorate.
Just one final question on the Teals, given we are in Kooyong this morning. Monique Ryan wasn't too keen to talk to us at all. We spoke to the Liberal candidate, Amelia Hamer. The voters have been able to have a pretty close look at the Teals and judge them on what they promised and what they've actually delivered. None of them look in grave danger of losing their seats. There's no, a fait accompli when it comes to the Teals losing their seats. But what about Kooyong? What are your observations about what voters think, particularly given in a seat like this there's been a massive redistribution after the abolishment of Higgins?
Yeah, I think the redistribution bit is interesting, and that sort of poses a bit of a question mark. Which way will those voters sort of fall once they're in there? I think there's some sort of colliding forces in Kooyong that I think do make it fascinating. I think you've got that redistribution effect. You've got the Liberals choosing a very smart and well-suited candidate, being a young woman. I think that was a very clever pre-selection. You've got this broader trend that we're seeing around the Liberals and this sort of loss of altitude on their primary vote, which we know is not necessarily sort of translating straight across into a Labor vote intention generally. As I said before, people aren't suddenly enamoured with the Albanese government. So where the Liberals are losing vote, a big chunk of that we know is going to third parties and independents. So you would think that kind of plays in Kooyong's favour. But also you've got this campaign. I don't think Monique Ryan has sort of done herself too many favours through the campaign. I think there's sort of been a few sort of blunders and things that she's made now as an incumbent MP where the dynamic is different that I think she'd probably want to do differently if she had her time over. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. What I keep coming back to when I look at a seat like Kooyong, though, is the demographic change, is what's happened since the last election. You've had big influx of new voters. It's a mobile community. You get a big influx of new voters. They skew younger. Those that have left skew older. I think that despite all that other stuff, I think that kind of demographic story, because we know those younger voters skew very heavily away from the Liberal Party, I think that gets her over the line. But it is fascinating because there are these competing dynamics going on in Kooyong.
Yeah, it's fascinating indeed. Simon, always good to talk to you. We'll speak to you next week. We'll see you soon.